It was supposed to be just another road trip, one of those family drives where the biggest challenge is keeping the kids from spilling juice on the seats or arguing over who gets the window. We had snacks in the cooler, cartoons playing in the back, and 5 hours ahead of us until we'd reach the family reunion just over the Canadian border. Nothing extraordinary, just a weekend of fake smiles, awkward hugs, and pretending the past didn't hang in the air like stale perfume. I was driving, as always. My wife, Claire, sat beside me, flipping through the playlist, and the kids, three of them, ages 6, 8, and 11. Sullivan, us, were half lost in their screens, half fighting invisible boundary lines drawn across the seat cushions. It was calm in that chaotic family way, the kind of calm that makes you feel like you're doing okay, even if you're barely holding things together. That's when it happened. Claire's hand froze halfway to her coffee. Her voice dropped, low and urgent. Ben, turn around. Now. I blinked, still caught in the hum of the highway. What? I asked, laughing a little, waiting for the punchline. But she wasn't joking. Her eyes were locked forward. Please, take the next exit. Now. I didn't argue. Not because I understood, but because I knew my wife. She doesn't panic. She doesn't overreact. So when her voice sounded like that, like it did the night our youngest fell and cracked his head open on the driveway, I listened. I took the exit. We curved gently off the interstate, trees pressing in on both sides, as if the road itself was shielding us from something we weren't ready to see. The moment we left the highway, I could see the tension in Claire's shoulders ease. Not entirely, but enough to know she'd been gripping fear in both fists. Okay, I said finally. What the hell's going on? Her eyes didn't leave the road. It's the red duffel, she said. The one your dad asked us to take in the trunk. The bag, just one more piece of luggage he insisted wouldn't fit in their own car. I hadn't even looked at it when I tossed it into the back. That's how much I trusted them. My parents, that's how blind I'd been. We drove in silence for another 20 minutes. The kids, too, distracted to notice anything was off. Then Claire pointed. Turn here. It was a forgotten service road, barely more than gravel and weeds. I stopped. Claire got out and went to the trunk. A minute passed, then 2. Finally, she knocked on my window. Ben, she said quietly, I need you to see this. I stepped out, heart pounding, like it already knew the truth. She opened the bag, folded clothes, baby wipes, and under it all, a plastic pouch stuffed with sealed packets, dozens of them. Not vitamins, not toiletries, something else, something you don't carry unless you're running from something or trying to get away with it. My mouth went dry. They put this in our car, I said. With our kids. Claire nodded, expression flat, like she was holding every emotion behind a dam made of sheer will. I didn't know for sure, she said. But when he handed it to you, the way he smiled, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I zipped the bag, closed the trunk, and stood in the silence, letting everything settle like dust after an explosion. Whatever illusion I'd built about my parents, that they were just reckless with money, just careless with feelings, shattered in an instant. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't desperation. This was betrayal, weaponized through trust. We got back in the car, didn't speak for miles. My hands shook on the wheel. Her breathing stayed shallow. We weren't just turning around from a road trip. We were pulling away from something rotten at its core, something that had worn the face of family for far too long. And somewhere, between the silence and the curve of the next road, I realized this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. We didn't go back home right away. We drove for hours without speaking, letting the lines of the road blur into a rhythm we could tolerate. The kids dozed off in the back, unaware that the trip had shifted from a family reunion to a silent reckoning. Claire stared out the window, arms crossed, her body still locked in that protective tension. I couldn't stop replaying it. The weight of the duffel bag, the look in my father's eyes, that easy smile that now felt like a razor blade. We stopped at a gas station in a town I couldn't name. While I filled the tank, Claire went inside and came out with 2 coffees and a silence I didn't dare break. We sat in the parking lot, engine idling, heater humming. Before she finally spoke, they knew exactly what they were doing. Ben, her voice was raw but steady. They put that in the car with our kids. They knew the risk and did it anyway. I nodded slowly, not because I was ready to agree, but because I was finally ready to stop denying what I'd known deep down for years. My parents had always lived on the edge. Financially, emotionally, morally. But this was different. This was criminal. This was betrayal of a kind that doesn't just hurt, it changes you. What do we do now? I asked, and it felt like asking what comes after an earthquake. Claire didn't answer. Instead, she reached for her phone and deleted every saved contact from my family. Then she handed it to me and said, "You should do the same." I stared at the screen for a long time. My thumb hovered over my mom's number, the one I used to call when I needed comfort, the one that now felt like a ticking time bomb. I pressed delete. That night, we checked into a roadside motel under Claire's maiden name. It smelled like bleach and old wallpaper glue, but it was safe. We ordered pizza, put the kids in one bed, and lay in the other, staring at the ceiling, not touching, not sleeping. I thought I was the responsible one. I whispered, "The stable one." Claire turned her head toward me. "You are. That's why we're not in jail right now." In the days that followed, we quietly dismantled the scaffolding that connected us to my parents. I called my boss and said I needed a week off. He didn't ask why, just told me to take care of myself. Claire's boss was less understanding, but she quit without blinking. "I'll find something else," she said. "Something that doesn't expect me to keep smiling while I'm screaming inside." We blocked numbers. We deleted old photos from cloud accounts. We burned the bridge and let the ashes settle. Then the calls started coming through in other ways. Blocked numbers. Relatives we hadn't spoken to in years. Voicemails that tried to sound innocent but cracked at the edges. My uncle called and left a message saying, "Your mom's worried sick. She said you just vanished." Vanished. That was their story, not what they'd done. Not the truth, but that we'd overreacted, disappeared, made a scene. Claire and I sat at the dining table one night, listening to those voicemails one by one. By the end, my hands were shaking with something between rage and heartbreak. Claire put a hand over mine and said, "We're not crazy. We're not cruel. We're protecting our family from people who refuse to protect themselves or anyone else." I nodded, because saying it out loud was too painful. But I knew she was right. Then came the final straw. A teacher from my kid's school called to confirm a pickup arrangement. "Your parents said they'd be picking up the kids today," she said. My blood turned to ice. "Absolutely not," I replied, voice cracking. "Under no circumstances are they allowed near my children." I drove to the school faster than I should have, heart pounding, chest tight. When I got there, the kids were fine, confused, but fine. I signed whatever forms I needed to keep it from ever happening again. That night, Claire and I sat on the porch, long after the kids were in bed. The stars were out, the night unusually still. "We need to go," I said. "Really go, not just hide for a while. Leave." Claire looked at me with the same expression she had the day I first told her I wanted kids. Equal parts fear and faith. "Where?" she asked. "North Carolina," I said. "My company has an office there. Your brother's there. The schools are good. It's a fresh start." She nodded slowly. "Let's do it." And that was it. Not a dramatic decision, just a quiet, permanent one. We sold the house, packed everything that mattered into a moving van, told the kids it was an adventure, a fresh chapter. We didn't say goodbye. We didn't owe that to anyone. We just disappeared. Not because we were running from something, but because we were finally running toward peace. North Carolina welcomed us with the kind of quiet we didn't realize we were starving for. The trees were taller, the air crisper, and for the first time in years, I could take a full breath without feeling like someone was watching. We rented a modest house on the edge of Asheville. Nothing fancy, just enough room for the five of us and the life we were rebuilding piece by piece. Claire got a part-time job at a local bookstore that smelled like cinnamon and old paper, and I transferred into the regional office of my company, where no one knew my history or that I'd once carried a bag full of someone else's consequences in the back of my car. The kids started new schools and didn't ask questions, at least not big ones. Occasionally, my youngest would ask why Grandma and Grandpa didn't call anymore, and Claire would gently redirect the conversation with grace I could never match. But for the most part, they adjusted better than I expected. It was me who struggled the most. At night, when the house was still, and the hum of distant crickets filled the space where anxiety used to live, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying moments I couldn't rewrite. I kept seeing my dad smile, my mom's hand on my shoulder, the red duffel bag sliding into the trunk like it belonged there. I told myself we'd done the right thing, over and over again, like a mantra I didn't fully believe. Then, one Saturday afternoon, I took my oldest son, Ethan, to a little league game. He stood in the outfield under a big blue sky, squinting against the sun, his glove slightly too big for his hand. And I realized something. I hadn't thought about my parents all day. That moment, watching Ethan fumble a ground ball and laugh, was the first time in a long time that I felt like we were building something real, something ours. That night, I didn't dream about the past. I slept deeply, like I used to when I was a kid, and the world felt safe. But peace has a way of making you drop your guard. And 3 months after we moved, I got an email that made my hands go numb. It was from my sister, subject line, emergency. I almost deleted it, but curiosity or weakness or both made me open it. The message was scattered, full of spelling errors and half-finished thoughts, but the core was clear. Our parents had been arrested, trying to cross into Canada with a car full of illegal product. No middleman this time, no innocent family members to carry their mess, just them, their arrogance, and a trunk full of evidence. My sister begged for help. They need a lawyer. She wrote, "This is serious. They could do time. You can't just ignore this." I stared at the screen for a long time, heart thudding. Claire found me at the kitchen table and asked if I was okay. I told her everything. She didn't flinch. She just asked, "What do you want to do?" And I surprised myself by saying, "Nothing." I didn't want revenge. I didn't want justice. I wanted peace. So I replied to my sister with a single line. "I did show up once. I won't do it again." And I meant it. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty for protecting my family instead of fixing someone else's disaster. A week later, I heard from a cousin who'd somehow tracked down my number. He left a voicemail laced with disappointment and warnings about turning your back on blood. I listened to it, deleted it, and then turned off my phone and went outside to play catch with Ethan. That's what mattered now. The life we were building. The kids we were raising, to be honest. Brave and unburdened. The quiet house that didn't smell like secrets. Every once in a while, I'd hear things. Rumors about my parents' case. Whispers from the old neighborhood that filtered through social media like static. I didn't chase them down. I didn't need to. I knew who they were. But more importantly, I knew who I was. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. 6 months after the arrest, life in North Carolina had settled into something I never thought I'd get to experience. Normal, real, uneventful, beautiful, normal. The kids had friends. Claire was hosting weekend book club dinners with other parents. I planted tomatoes in the backyard and got mad when the deer ate them. We went entire weeks without talking about the past. But peace has a strange way of making the past knock louder. One crisp November morning, just before Thanksgiving, I got a letter. Not an email, not a voicemail, an actual letter in my mailbox, addressed in my father's handwriting. Inside was a card with a picture of a turkey on the front and a single line written in shaky pen. You always did know how to walk away. No apology, no admission, just a quiet weapon of guilt disguised as a greeting. I showed it to Claire. She looked at it, sighed, and said, "Burn it or keep it. Just don't let it live rent-free in your head." I burned it because she was right. But the next day, I got a call from Ethan's school. Apparently, someone claiming to be his grandfather had left a voicemail asking to verify pickup schedules. They flagged it as suspicious. I drove to the school in a fog of fear and fury, my jaw clenched so tight I could barely speak to the principal. Claire and I sat down that night and decided it was time to make things legal. Restraining orders, full custody documentation, address privacy measures, not because we thought they'd come back soon, but because peace should never be confused with permission. A few weeks later, I learned they'd taken a plea deal, 4 years each. Not enough, in my opinion, for what they tried to do. But it was something, and with that chapter closed, the silence returned. This time, it wasn't empty. It was full of small moments that added up to something strong. Pancake Saturdays, rainy movie nights, last-minute bike rides before dinner. One night, while putting our youngest to bed, she looked up and said, "Dad, I like it here. Everyone feels happy." That wrecked me in the best way. Because kids don't fake safety. They either feel it or they don't. And she did. We all did. I don't check the mail with dread anymore. I don't look over my shoulder when my phone rings. I don't explain myself to cousins or old neighbors or anyone who starts a sentence with, "But they're still your parents. I owe them nothing." And that's not cruelty. That's healing. That's what boundaries look like when they're finally respected, even if only by yourself. We didn't disappear. We didn't burn every bridge. We just built new ones in a place where love doesn't come with conditions. If you're still reading, wondering if you'd have done the same, if you'd walked away or stayed, if you'd cut contact or given one more chance, I don't have the answer for you. But I can tell you this. When someone hands you a bag and says, "Trust me," open it every time, because sometimes love isn't tested by how much you're willing to carry. It's tested by how brave you are to put it down. For good.